Yo guys, what is up? Max on a Borderlands 4 video, and today we are updating Ranger Rafa. Now, this is my personal favorite Rafa build. It is kind of a do-it-all Rafa build in that on this setup, you can achieve 100% crit chance. On this newer setup, you're at 100% crit chance, basically with all of your guns. You can use any weapon, you do a ton of damage, you've got good survivability, and it really is a really strong all-rounder Rafa build, and the kind of one that I default to. Now, in some of the most recent updates, Gearbox not only changed Soltado, which is one of Rafa's skills, to work with 2 out of 1 skill points, which we're going to be discussing. They also changed the way that the nature that critical hits work and the difference between true and fake crits, which we'll also be discussing, that has impacted our build. Hope you guys enjoy the breakdown, but real quick, speaking of improvemements, a word from our sponsor. Today's video is sponsored by Rig. They just released their brand new headset, the R5 Pro HSs, which is the first product in their R5 headset line. And this headset is officially licensed for PlayStation, but it's compatible with all consoles. I've been using mine on PC. Now, what sets this headset apart from the rest of the competitors is its 40mm graphene drivers that deliver high quality audio with only 0.5% harmonic distortion. This headset is also optimized for Tempest 3D audio. When used on the PlayStation 5, you're going to experience immersive spatial audio that'll be accurate for a 360-degree field, giving you a competitive advantage knowing where other players might be. One of my favorite features of the new R5 Pro HS is that when you lift the microphone up, it will auto mute for you, so you never need to worry about if you're muted or not. If the headset is up, you will be muted. Lastly, this headset has memory foam ear cushions and also a memory foam head cushion, so that you're not going to be getting like pains or headaches while you're using these for extended amounts of time. If you want to pick up these headphones today, you can do so down in the link in the description. So let's do a quick overview of what like Ranger Rafa is in the first place, and then we'll get into the specifics and like what's changed and what's different and why this is such an upgrade basically from the old build, in my opinion. So a few things. The idea of Ranger Rafa is to use any weapon and get a ton of just general buffs via the Dancer class mod. The Dancer class mod gives us 100% increased overdrive bonuses. Overdrive is Rafa's trait. While you have overdrive, you get extra damage and movement speed. And in his blue tree, there's tons of like huge buffs that are active while your overdrive is active. Now, a big misconception or confusion on the old Rafa build, as I was showing like my brain dump with 75% crit chance and all of these buffs like super high percentages. That is because these buffs like retroactively change with the state of your build. So for example, overdrive is only active when my action skill is active. So if my action skill is not active, you will see these like low values. So for example, if we go kill something right now, activate our action skill, let our stacks of Querga stack up, and kill some stuff. Make sure we're fully stacked. But now that we're fully stacked, that like 15% crit chance is now 75% crit chance. So that's where these like big stats are coming from. But while our overdrive is active, we're going to be getting 75% crit chance. We get 150% gun damage. We get 75% fire rate, 125% reload speed, and an additional 65% fire rate from the thrill, and like a bunch of huge overdrive bonuses, 200% shield recharge rate and delay. And that's kind of the idea of Ranger Rafa, is we're speccing Red Tree to get our Peacebreaker cannons to keep them up, our like overdrive constantly up with Instinto, which is going to give us action skill restore on kill, so we get our action skill constantly up. We are using a Dancer to get a plus point into Soltado to get all of our overdrive bonuses increasing whenever we kill something, and then we just run around with tons of movement speed, tons of damage, and tons of quality of life. Now, the big changes to Ranger Rafa mainly come in our far left side of the tree, and the fact that we have opted out of going 2 out of 1 into Soltado. Now, when I first saw that they were buffing Soltado to work with 2 points, I thought it was going to be insane, and like every build was going to go it. However, the Gearbox has done something with 2 out of 1 Soltado that they haven't done for any other skill, and that there is a massive diminishing return on this. So if you put 1 point into Soltado, all your kill skill bonuses are increased by 100%. the second point, instead of 100%, you only get half value on the second point. So you go from 100% overdrive bonuses to 150%. Now, that is very good, and all of the builds that are speccing all the way down to soltado, like Splash and Dash, will benefit from that, and it's great. However, for Ranger Rafa, we lose a ton of things going all the way down to soltado. We lose a ton of our crit chance. There's so many things in Blue Tree that we miss out on, and we actually end up dealing less damage with 2 out of 1 soltado than if we like just go for 1. And it experiences diminishing returns. So we're going from like 200% overdrive bonuses to 250%. That second point is only giving us a net return of around 15 to 20% actual more of our kill skill bonuses, and we lose out on like tons of things. So 2 out of 1 soltado just isn't worth for Ranger Rafa. Other builds will benefit from it, but it's just not worth for this particular build. For example, with a Ranger Rafa, we get 150% gun damage. We could get a big increase to splash damage with Barrage if we went this deep. However, that's very specific to just certain weapons, and this is a use any weapon build, and both gun damage and splash damage are additive. They're in the same soup pool, so gun damage is realistically better than splash damage. But yeah, not going into soltado. Now, the other changes have to do with Gearbox's reworking of how crits and like true crit work, and that is why we're so deep into the left tray. Now, I made a full like 12-minute video breakdown explanation on the reason why true crits are so good and what that actually means. So if you want to get the full breakdown, I'll leave a link down in the description. But basically, I'm going to let my action skill end here. Basically, there's 2 types of crits in Borderlands 4. There's true crits and fake crits. If you have percentage crit chance from things like Brain Dump, and we shoot an enemy and we proc a crit, that crit will get a generic percentage increase of 100% damage, but it will not get any other crit damage increases. It will not get this 25% from Deadeye. It won't get the additional 40% from this crit damage. On our artifact, it won't get this 50% gun damage increase. It won't get gun card damage increases. So like we'd be missing out on this 70% if we're using a boom slag. Basically, fake crits, you only get 100% increase. You don't benefit from any other crit damage increase. However, if you weak point crits, which is shooting an enemy in their weak point and proccing a crit, you get your crit damage, your 100%, plus your card damage on your gun, plus your enhancements, plus your skills, plus all of the gun damage from Deadeye. And so a true crit is way more powerful, at least double damage on most builds than a fake crit. And Brain Dump is still a fake crit, meaning it will work with crit skills. However, it won't actually get all of the damage of our crit damage increases. However, in the most recent change, they've made Awe now a true crit. So Awe, whenever we shock an enemy, all of our shots fired at that enemy are critical hits for a duration. This is guaranteed crits, and these are true crits, meaning that we just deal way more damage. So we're changing the build a bit to now we need to shock enemies. However, you do not want to use a shock weapon on Ranger Rafa. I mean, you definitely could, but the whole draw of this build is that you can use any weapon. And so we're changing the shield from a super soldier into a siphon Watts for dinner. You don't need amp. Amp's not really doing much for this particular build, but you do want a siphon roll, which whenever we're dealing damage, we can get overshield. Whenever we have overshield, we get bonus shock damage. Now, this shock damage from our Watts can shock, as you can see, like literally right there, we're getting a shock dot. And with this particular build, we're basically insta-procking shock dots because we have like 65% chance to proc shock status effects with Conductivo, but we're also changing our specialization points to pick up Contamination. Contamination reads that whenever we crit, we get increased status effect chance. This is an additional 100% increased status effect chance whenever we crit, and whenever we're proccing status effects, we get guaranteed crits. So it kind of feeds into itself, and then when we're guaranteed critting, we're proccing this, and then that dot damage increase or status effect chance increase will allow us to proc Awe more consistently. So just with a Watts for dinner, we can basically have 100% uptime on Awe, which allows us to crit literally everything in front of us. Now, the other change in points has to do with us going into Fiesta. Now, originally, I was going to put 5 points into Huerga. Whenever we crit an enemy, we get action skill duration restore. This is really nice. We use this on a lot of builds to upkeep our action skill. However, point for point, pound for pound, Fiesta is actually better. And I wouldn't have known this if a chatter didn't tell me, like, yo, by the way, Fiesta gives you infinite uptime on your Peacebreaker cannons. We tried it out, and just with 3 points here, literally your action skill will never go down. Whenever we apply a status effect, which once again, we've got like ridiculous status effect chance, whenever we do, or our action, we get our action skills consuming no duration. So for like 1.5 seconds, we don't consume any duration. And because we're using Instinto, whenever we get a kill, we get duration restore. So our action skill is never consuming because we're constantly proccing dots. And every time we get a kill, we get it to restore. So literally, like, you have infinite uptime of your Peacebreaker cannons, which is so important because whenever we have our Peacebreaker cannons active, we are getting all of our damage. We really don't do much damage unless our Peacebreaker cannons are active. That's because we lose all of our overdrive bonuses. So that is kind of like the big changes to the build. We're going more heavy into Blue Tree. We're getting more damage. We're getting more quality of life. And the build is just better overall, in my opinion. Some last skill tree notes. We're mainly using Instinto for the duration restore. However, for certain bosses, I will put on Bullet Buddy Deluxe for the infinite ammo. Not really needed for most content. However, certain weapons really love Bullet Buddy Deluxe, especially if they've got low mag size. You can use this with the bod, the Dark Beast, whatever. I find the Dark Beast or the bod usually kills enemies before Bullet Buddy Deluxe runs out, so it's actually slows down our DPS. So for bod kills, I'll just use Instinto, but for bosses on everything else, I'll pretty much use Bullet Buddy Deluxe. And then some last notes in the Blue Tree. We're not going to First Impressions. First Impressions was buffed. It's really good. It works with multi-pellet weapons. However, it only works on the first shot fired from your magazine. Even if you have infinite ammo, the second shot, even if you're not consuming ammo, doesn't get First Impressions. And so, there's so many guns that you wouldn't benefit from this on this build. We're using a lot of, full auto, large mag size guns. And so I'll probably be making a different build with First Impressions. However, for this build, it just doesn't really do great for us. We are going to be going for Al Centro, which gives us the increased gun handling. You're going to want to look for a +5 Tamario class mod, which gives you a bunch of extra gun damage, but it reduces your gun handling. We want our guns to feel really good. Gun handling was buffed. It now gives you increased projectile speed and better accuracy. And so we want a positive amount of gun handling to offset our negative amount of gun handling. So this makes all of our weapons feel way better. So that's why we're going for that. And then the other thing to note in this skill tree is it's really up to you if you want to go for El Catrine or not. If you're constantly using weapons that are full auto, you don't really need Brain Dump. It is a bit redundant when we have Awe. However, if you want to use things like the Hot Slugger or the Boom Slang or any sort of snipers or one-shot weapons, obviously, if you're one-shotting things, you're not going to be proccing Awe on them all that often or consistently. So Brain Dump still gives us that big crit chance for one-shot weapons. And so I'm using that. The other reason I didn't spec into El Catrine is I just don't slide. I'm mainly super dashing on PC. So sliding is basically just slower and a little inefficient. But if you want to be sliding, you can put 5 points into El Catrine instead of Brain Dump. This will give you a whole lot of extra bonus shock damage and extra crit damage. You slide before a boss and it'll be very, very dead. All right, now let's talk weapons. Once again, this is a use any weapon build, so pick something you like and rock it. Some new ones to call out. I think the Dark Beast is now the best SMG in the game and also one of the best guns in the game. I really like this thing. I'll use for mobbing, I like a Jacobs Daedalish shotgun one. You can run out of ammo quickly with how much you're spraying shotguns, so you don't need the Daedalus ammo swap. You're mainly just looking for Jacobs, which is super nice. It allows this thing to mob like crazy. For bossing, if you wanted to use the Dark Beast for bossing, it's weaker than things like the bod, but once again, what isn't weaker than the bod? If you find a Ripper part, you can use a Ripper enhancement. This thing will fry bosses for you. Super cool. The bod, once again, is the best bossing weapon for this build. We have an F-ton of gun damage, and the bod gets 5x of any gun damage increases. I rock an SMG sticky bod. Mine's got pretty low base damage. It doesn't really matter. The new Rowdy Riders, super fun mobbing weapon on this build. You get extra ricochets, and it'll default roll with Jacobs. So this build just performs really, really well with the Rowdy Rider. I also love the Boom Slang. Boom Slang is just a fun gun to use. I use a dataless shotgun ammo swap Boom Slang. One shots most enemies. Super fun to mob with. But once again, there's really like no wrong choice. The Bonnie and Clyde is fantastic on this build, especially with the amount of reload speed that we get. The Golden God is something I was definitely sleeping on. Does some really, really cool things for mobbing, especially if you can get a Jacobs part on it. The Asher's Rise is actually pretty good now. That got buffed. Any pistols like the Seventh Sense feels really good on this build. Once again, can't go wrong. For the rest of our gear, for mobbing, I rock a triple bypass. You could also go kill spring. I mainly use this for the triple charges so that whenever we're stabbing ourselves, we get our action skill back. We only do damage when our action skill is up. So triple bypass with the specialization now with caffeine gives us 75% of our action skill back when we use a triple bypass. Super, super nice. For our grenade, you could technically use anything like I didn't want to put on a crit knife on this build, and so the other interesting thing, because the crit knife is kind of redundant besides the amp, is a shock grenade. Shock grenades in general can roll the alchemic augment, which gives you increased grenade status effect chance. If you throw this at a boss before you start shooting at them, you will start your boss rotation with your 100% true crit chance, which is pretty sick, useful, definitely not needed if you don't have something like this. Your like second or third shot of any weapon you're doing will proc your awe anyways. So it's just like kind of a cool item that this build can take advantage of. For your class mod, we're using a dancer, the God Roll dancer. I still need to go get a better one of these. Would be action skill cooldown rate and action skill duration. Duration super great with the dancer. And then you'd want 1 into soltado, 5 into Tamario would be the God Roll. I'm just still using my old one. For the shield, we're using a Watts for Dinner with Siphon. You don't need amp on your Watts for Dinner. Amp really isn't doing too much because we're not like able to amp all of our shots. So don't worry too much about amp, but you really do want a Siphon. That will allow you to have way more consistent uptime on your awe. And then for your enhancement, I like to swap my enhancement around depending on the weapon that I'm using. We are using a lot of Jacob's weapons. Prior to this build update, we were using the Proficient Quintain, which gives us that 20% chance to crit, which was extra nice. However, we have true crit now, so that's not necessary. So we can go for a hat trick, which gives us stacking bonus damage. Once again, not needed, but this would be like your basically ideal enhancement. Gives us a ton of extra damage, and then depending on like the weapon, I'll use like an accelerator, gun damage, shotgun damage, a dataless thing for like the bod. If we're pulling out a like a COV or a Ripper weapon, I'll pull on like a Ripper enhancement, but mostly just using the hat trick. For our firmware, we're rocking Deadeye 3 for the extra gun crit and the stacking crit, which will both be applying to our true crits, and high caliber for the multiplicative increased gun damage. Super nice. And then our specializations, we are rocking Riddle You This for the stacking gun damage, contamination, so we basically guarantee proc shock dots. I've got In the Zone, so when we aim down sights, we get extra gun and crit damage. And then I use Now with Caffeine, so we get some extra cooldown whenever our action skill goes away. Guys, that's going to do it for the Ranger Rafa build update. I hope you guys enjoyed. I hope you found it informative. I will catch y'all in the next one. Take care. Bye.